You ever have those moments where the universe dangles a lifeline right in front of your face, but it's just out of reach? Like, you can see the solution to every single problem keeping you up at night, but grabbing it might actually destroy the little bit of dignity you have left. I lived that moment. It wasn't in a movie or a book. It was on a rainy Tuesday in San Francisco, on the 42nd floor of the Sterling Dynamics building. And it started with the squeak of a dry erase marker and the arrogance of a man who thought he owned the world. I was wiping down the mahogany conference table circular motions. Wax on, wax off, just like I'd done for 3 years. I was invisible. That's the superpower of being the cleaning lady in a billion-dollar tech firm. You're furniture. You're part of the infrastructure, less important than the Wi-Fi signal. I was Eleanor Rossi to the payroll department, but to Gavin Sterling, the 30-year-old CEO who inherited his empire and his ego in the same trust fund, I was just a help. Gavin was pacing the room, slamming a thick document onto the table. It was heavy, bound in red leather, with gold-embossed kanji characters on the front. He looked like a spoiled kid who'd been given a toy he couldn't figure out how to turn on. His executive team, 6 men in suits, that cost more than my grandmother's car, were sitting there looking terrified. $30,000, Gavin announced, his voice echoing off the glass walls. He pulled a checkbook out of his jacket pocket, ripped out a pre-signed check, and slapped it on top of the red folder. I will give a $30,000 cash bonus right now to anyone who can translate this technical proposal by tomorrow morning. My usual translators are stuck in Tokyo due to the typhoon, and the firm we hired is giving me gibberish. I need to know if Takara Robotics is selling us their IP or trying to hostile take over my supply chain. The room went dead silent. You could hear the rain hitting the glass. $30,000, I froze. My hand, holding the lemon-scented rag, stopped mid-wipe. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. $30,000. That wasn't just money. That was the exact amount down to the last few hundred that I needed to pay off the lien on my grandmother's house before the bank foreclosed on Friday. It was the cost of her heart medication for the next 2 years. It was freedom. It was air. Use Google Translate. One of the VPs, a slimy guy named Marcus Thorne, chuckled nervously, swirling the ice in his scotch. Or maybe ask the cleaning lady. I hear she knows how to read labels. The room erupted in laughter. It was that low, cruel laughter that rich men share when they think nobody else is listening. Gavin actually kicked the wheel of my cleaning cart to move it out of his way. Don't be an idiot, Marcus. I need an engineer who speaks fluent Osaka dialect technical Japanese, not someone who specializes in toilet bowl cleaner. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I kept my head down, finished wiping the table, and backed out of the room, fading into the hallway. But my heart was pounding a hole in my chest. Because here's the joke, the cosmic, twisted joke. I wasn't just a cleaner. My father was Giovanni Rossi, an Italian engineer who met my mother, Keiko, in Osaka during a robotics fellowship in the 90s. I grew up in a house where we spoke 3 languages at the dinner table. My dad didn't just teach me Japanese. He taught me the language of machines. He taught me about torque, fluid dynamics, and semiconductors before I learned how to ride a bike. And the cruelest part? My dad used to work for this company. He helped build the foundation Sterling Dynamics stood on, until Gavin Sterling's father fired him to cut costs, stole his patents, and left us with nothing but medical bills. When Dad got sick, I walked to the supply closet, my sanctuary, and locked the door. I pulled out the eviction notice from my pocket. It was crumpled, soft from being held too tight. Final notice. 72 hours. I sat on a bucket of floor wax and cried. Just for a minute. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only thing my father left me that wasn't dead, his fount. Ain pen. It was an old Namiki, black lacquer with gold dust, heavy and cold. He used to say, Elena, words are the code that programs reality. Be precise. I had a choice. I could let the bank take Nana's house, or I could swallow my pride and use the brain my father gave me. I waited until 9 p.m. The office was mostly empty, just the hum of the servers and the janitorial crew moving through the shadows. I slipped back into the conference room. The red folder was gone, locked in Gavin's office. but they had left photocopies of the proposal scattered on the whiteboard table, covered in red ink where they'd tried and failed to make sense of it. I looked at the pages. It wasn't just Japanese. It was poetry. It was technical poetry about fluidic actuators and haptic feedback loops. And the executives had it all wrong. They had translated collaborative redundancy as job cuts. They thought Takara Robotics wanted to fire people. I read the characters again. Kairyoku Tekinich Fuku, no. They were proposing a dual manufacturing process. They wanted to double production, not slash the workforce. If Gavin signed the deal thinking they were cutting jobs, he'd agree to terms that would bankrupt the company in 5 years. If he refused, he'd miss the biggest tech leap of the decade. I pulled out a piece of company letterhead. My hand was shaking, but as soon as the nib of my father's pen touched the paper, the fear vanished. I started translating. I didn't do the whole thing, just the executive summary and the critical clause. They were misinterpreting. I wrote it in clear, precise English, correcting their math errors in the margins. I didn't sign my name. I just drew a tiny, rough sketch of an owl in the corner, something my dad used to draw on my lunch bags. The night owl. I left the page right in the center of the table, under Gavin's heavy crystal water pitcher, and slipped out. The next morning, the explosion happened. I was emptying the recycling bins near the break room when I heard Gavin shouting, "Who wrote this? I want a name. This is brilliant. This changes the entire valuation of the deal." I stayed quiet, buffing a smudge on the glass wall, trying to control my breathing. I watched through the glass as Gavin waved my paper round. And then I saw him. Marcus Thorne, the VP who had made the joke about me reading labels. He was standing next to Gavin, reading the paper. I saw the gears turning in his head. He looked around the room, saw nobody was claiming it, and a slow, greasy smile spread across his face. "Actually, Gavin," Marcus said, straightening his tie. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, but I stayed late last night. I ran the raw data through a new AI program I've been beta testing and cleaned up the syntax myself. It's a rough draft, but you? Gavin looked skeptical. "Since when do you speak Japanese?" "I don't," Marcus lied smoothly. "But I speak algorithm. I cracked the code, Gavin. I saved the deal." Gavin clapped him on the shoulder. "Marcus, you sly dog. The 30 grand is yours. Have it wire transferred to your account by noon." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I watched Marcus smile that shark-like, dead-eyed smile and accept the money that was supposed to save my grandmother's life. He didn't just steal the credit. He stole my family's future. I wanted to burst in there and scream. But who would they believe? The VP in the Armani suit, or the girl wearing a blue smock with a name tag that was crooked? I went home that night to a silent house. Nana was sleeping in the recliner because she couldn't lay flat with her heart condition. The house smelled like old lavender and impending doom. I looked at the eviction notice on the counter. Tuesday was tomorrow. I couldn't let him win. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my dad. It was about the fact that guys like Marcus Thorne had been standing on the necks of people, like my father for decades, taking their genius and calling it management. I went back to work the next day with a plan. It was risky. If I got caught, I wouldn't just be fired. They could press charges for corporate espionage or accessing confidential files. But I didn't care. I waited for the lunch rush. Marcus usually spent 2 hours at a steakhouse down the street. I swiped his keycard. He always left his spare in his gym bag under his desk because he was arrogant and careless. I slipped into his office. I opened his laptop. He hadn't even password protected the file folder labeled Takara Project. I opened the document, and then I saw it. He hadn't just stolen my translation. He was altering it. I read the new paragraphs he had added. He was changing the technical specs. Where I had translated high-tolerance safety protocols, he had changed it to standard protocols. Where the Japanese text demanded worker retention guarantees, Marcus had deleted it entirely. Why? I scrolled through his emails, and there it was. An email chain with a hedge fund buddy of his. Marcus was betting against the company. He wanted the deal to go through, but he wanted it to fail technically in 6 months so the stock would tank, and he could short it. He was sabotaging the entire merger for a quick payout. I was shaking. This wasn't just theft. It was destruction. He was going to ruin thousands of jobs, just like they ruined my dad. Looking for something, Elena? I spun around. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Marcus Thorne was standing in the doorway. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked cold, hard, and dangerous. He closed the door behind him and locked it. I was just dusting, I stammered, backing away from the desk. Don't insult my intelligence, Marcus said, stepping closer. He smelled like expensive cologne and stale cigar smoke. I checked the security logs from the other night. I saw you in the conference room. The night owl, right? Cute drawing. He walked over to me, looming over my shoulder. He saw the open document on his screen. You know, he whispered, his voice low and menacing. I could call the police right now. Breaking and entering. Accessing private servers. You'd go to jail for a long time, Elena. And what happens to that sick grandmother of yours then? Who pays for the heart surgery when you're sitting in a cell? I couldn't breathe. He knew. He had looked into my file. He knew everything. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my father's pen. He held it up to the light, inspecting the gold nib. Nice pen. Probably worth a month of your rent. Give it back, I whispered. No, he said, slipping it into his own pocket. This is insurance. You're going to walk out of here. You're going to finish your shift. And you're never going to mention this again. If you do, I won't just fire you. I'll make sure your grandmother is on the street by sunset. Do we understand each other? He waited, enjoying the power, enjoying the fear in my eyes. Do we understand each other? He yelled. Yes, I choked out. Good. Now get out. And take the trash with you. I ran. I ran to the stairwell and collapsed on the concrete steps. I had lost. He had my dad's pen. He had the money. He held my grandmother's life in his hands. I had 24 hours left. I went back to cleaning. I had to. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. But as I was scrubbing the floor in the lobby, watching the rain streak the windows, I remembered something my father told me when he was teaching me how to solder circuit boards. Elena, if the connection is broken, don't force it. Bypass it. Create a new path. Marcus thought he had cut all my wires. He thought fear was the only circuit that mattered. But he forgot one thing. The Japanese delegation, Takara Robotics, was arriving tomorrow morning for the signing ceremony. And Mr. Takara, the CEO, was an old-school engineer. He didn't care about stock prices. He cared about honor. And he cared about the tech. Marcus had deleted my digital files. He had stolen my physical notes. But he couldn't delete what was in my head. I spent the entire night awake. I didn't have the documents anymore, but I had a photographic memory for mechanics. I rewrote the translation. Not on paper, Marcus would find it. I wrote it on the back of the catering menus for the morning meeting. I wrote notes in the margins of the napkins. I prepared a technical addendum that proved Marcus was lying about the safety protocols. Tuesday morning. The deadline. The boardroom was packed. Gavin Sterling sat at the head of the table, looking smug. Marcus was to his right, wearing a new suit, looking like the cat that ate the canary. On the screen, video link from Osaka, was the Takara team. And sitting in the room, physically, were 3 representatives from the Japanese consulate. I was there to pour coffee. That was my role. The invisible hand. Marcus stood up to present. Gentlemen, he said, gesturing to the screen. As per my translation of your proposal, we are ready to proceed with the acquisition of the IP, with the understanding that we will be streamlining the workforce. On the screen, Mr. Takara, an elderly man with stern eyes, frowned. He leaned over to his aide and whispered something. They looked confused. Streamlining? Mr. Takara said in broken English. Our proposal says expansion, double capacity, safety, high priority. Marcus laughed nervously. Ah, yes, well, there are some translation nuances, Mr. Takara, in American business terms. Expansion requires efficiency. We need to cut the fat. He was doing it. He was sabotaging the deal right in front of them, using language barriers to hide his greed. Gavin looked confused, but he trusted Marcus. I was standing behind Marcus, holding the silver coffee pot. My hand was trembling. This was it. I could pour the coffee and walk away, keep my job, and lose my soul. Or I could burn it all down. I looked at Marcus's jacket pocket. I saw the clip of my father's pen. I took a deep breath. And then I didn't pour the coffee into the cup. I dropped the heavy silver pot. Clang. It hit the table right in front of Marcus, splashing hot coffee all. The silence in that boardroom was heavier than concrete. You could hear the hum of the hard drives, the drip of coffee off the table, and the sound of Marcus Thorne's career disintegrating in real time. Gavin Sterling looked at me, then at Marcus, then at the screen where Mr. Takara was leaning in so close to the camera. His breath was fogging the lens. Rossi? Gavin said, the name sparking a faint memory in his trust fund brain. Giovanni Rossi? The engineer. The genius your father fired to save a nickel, I said, switching to English. My voice was steady, cold. The man whose patents you're still using in your guidance systems. This is insane. Marcus sputtered, grabbing napkins and frantically dabbing at his ruined suit. She's the cleaning lady. She's mentally unstable, Gavin. Look at her. She spilled coffee on purpose. Security. Get security in here now. Wait, Mr. Takara's voice boomed from the speakers. It wasn't a request. It was an order. The Japanese CEO looked at me with an intensity that would have melted steel. Giovanni Rossi was my friend, Takara said in Japanese. He was a man of honor. If you are his daughter, speak. What is this about safety protocols? Don't listen to her. Marcus yelled, actually stepping between me and the camera. She's disgruntled help. She's trying to sabotage the merger. I didn't back down. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the crumpled, coffee-stained napkin where I had retranslated the critical clause. Page 42. Paragraph 3, I said, looking directly at the camera, ignoring Marcus. The text reads, fluidic actuator tolerance must be maintained at 0.01 microns. But Mr. Thorne's contract changed it to 0.5 microns. That is a 50-time reduction in safety. If you build these robots with his specs, the hydraulic lines will burst under pressure. People will get hurt. I turned to Gavin, and when those robots fail, Sterling Dynamics stock will crash, which is exactly what Marcus wants, because he bought put options on your stock 3 days ago. Gavin's face went pale. He looked at Marcus. Is that true? Of course not. Marcus laughed, but it was a high, shrill sound. Sweat was beading on his upper lip. She's making it up. She doesn't even have a computer. How would she know about about any options? Check his email, I said. Folder marked personal, subfolder alpha. He didn't even encrypt it. Gavin didn't wait. He grabbed Marcus's laptop, the one that was dripping with coffee but still running, and shoved Marcus away. He tapped a few keys. Marcus tried to lunge for it, but the 2 massive security guards who had just burst into the room grabbed him by the arms. Gavin read the screen. His eyes got wide. Then they got narrow. He looked up at Marcus with pure disgust. You shorted us, Gavin whispered. You were going to tank the company for, what, $2 million? It's just business, Gavin. Marcus screamed, struggling against the guards. Everyone does it. This deal is garbage anyway. I was saving us. Get him out of here, Gavin said, his voice low. And call the FBI. I want him charged with insider trading, corporate espionage, and whatever else we can throw at him. As the guards dragged Marcus toward the door, he dug his heels into the carpet. He looked at me with pure venom. You're nothing. He screamed. You're a janitor. You'll be scrubbing toilets until you die. Wait, I said. The guards stopped. I walked over to Marcus. He was panting, his hair messed up, looking pathetic. I reached into his jacket pocket, the wet, coffee-stained jacket, and pulled out the black Namiki fountain pen. You took something of mine, I said quietly. I wiped the pen on my sleeve. And by the way, it's not just a pen. It's the tool that wrote the patents you've been stealing for 20 years. I turned my back on him. Get him out. When the door slammed shut, the room was quiet again. Gavin looked at me. He looked at the mess on the table. He looked at the Japanese delegation on the screen. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing on a trapdoor. So, Gavin said, clearing his throat awkwardly, you speak Japanese and Italian, I said, and C++, and Python, Mr. Takara began to clap. Slow, rhythmic clapping. "Sugoi," he said. "Magnificent. Gavin-san, you have been trying to impress me with expensive dinners and suits, but the only person in your building who understands my technology is the one emptying your trash." Takara leaned forward. "I will sign the deal, Gavin-san, but only under one condition." "Anything," Gavin said immediately. "Name it. The safety protocols remain at 0.01 microns, and the person overseeing the technical integration must be Rossi-san." Gavin blinked. He looked at me, messy hair, cleaner's uniform, holding a pen like a weapon. "Elena, but she's not an executive. She doesn't have a degree. I have 2 years of engineering from Stanford before I had to drop out to pay for my dad's chemo." I corrected him. "And I have more hours studying this specific tech than your entire board combined." "She is the condition," Takara repeated. "Take it or leave it." Gavin ran a hand through his perfect hair. He looked at the $30,000 check that was still sitting on the side table, untouched. He picked it up. He walked over to me. "Elena," he said, and for the first time, he actually looked at me, not through me. "I'm sorry about your father. I didn't know. You didn't ask," I said. "Fair enough." He handed me the check. "The bonus is yours. You earned it. 30,000. I looked at the check. It was salvation. It was Nana's heart surgery. It was the house. My hand twitched to take it, but then I looked at Takara on the screen. I looked at the pen in my hand. "I don't want the bonus," I said. Gavin looked confused. "What? It's 30 grand. You. No offense, but you look like you need it." "I need a salary," I said firmly. "I want the position of Director of Technical Integration. I want a contract. I want benefits. I want my father's pension reinstated for my grandmother. And I want a signing bonus of $50,000. Gavin laughed. It was a shocked, incredulous laugh. "You're negotiating? You were cleaning the floor 5 minutes ago, and 5 minutes ago you were about to lose a $1 billion deal and go to prison for negligence," I countered. "I think my price is cheap." Gavin looked at the screen. Takara was smiling. "Fine," Gavin said, shaking his head. "Director Rossi, you start now. Go get changed." I walked out of that boardroom, and I swear I felt 6 inches taller. I didn't go to the locker room. I walked straight to the lobby, out the front doors, and into the rain. I called my grandmother. "Nana," I said, tears mixing with the rain on my face. "Pack a bag. We're going to the hospital. You're getting the surgery, Elena." She sounded weak. "We can't afford it, Bambina." The house is safe," I said. "And so are we." 6 months later, I was sitting in my own office. It had glass walls, but I wasn't cleaning them anymore. I was looking out at the San Francisco skyline. My desk was mahogany. On it sat a framed picture of my dad, and next to it, the black Namiki pen on a velvet stand. We had just launched the new Takara Sterling medical robots. They were saving lives in hospitals across the country. And the best part? We doubled the workforce to build them. I hired people like me, people with non-traditional backgrounds, people who had been overlooked, people who knew what it was like to be hungry. There was a knock on the door. It was the new cleaning lady, a young woman named Sophia. She looked terrified to interrupt me. "I'm sorry, Ms. Rossi," she whispered, holding a trash bag. "I can come back later." I stood up. I walked over to her. I saw the textbook sticking out of her back pocket. "Introduction to Astrophysics." "Sophia," I said, smiling. "Put the bag down. I'm having a coffee. You want one?" She looked shocked. "Me, but you're never just anything," I said. "Come sit down. Tell me about that book in your pocket, because that's the thing about being invisible. Once you've been there, you never forget what it feels like. And you make damn sure that when you finally get the spotlight, you don't just shine it on yourself. You shine it on the shadows, to find the next person waiting for their chance to speak. So, let me ask you this. Who are you walking past every single day? Ideally, we like to think talent rises to the top, but the truth is, sometimes talent is just mopping the floor, waiting for someone to drop a document in the wrong language. Have you ever felt like you were screaming in a room full of deaf people? Or have you ever been the one who refused to listen? Let me know in the comments. I read them all, because you never know where the next genius is hiding. Stay sharp, stay kind, and for God's sake, be careful who you give your coffee to. Thanks for listening. See you next time.